everybody. Welcome to a Saturday morning edition of The Sweat. 2 hours of the good stuff. Julian being cranky and Josh and Steve fighting about the weather. Yeah. I do have a feeling hell has frozen over, and a lot of you on this desk, the three of you, will be on the same page more than we are used to on this show.
Watch out for that windy under in Houston.
Oh, yeah, those crosswinds indoors.
Emerson, by the way, you know what it's called when you and all your boys are on the same play?
What's that?
A brotherhood play.
Ah.
You like that?
Wolfpack.
Yeah,
Wolfpack.
let's go.
All right, let's go. We're going to mix in tons of bets and DFS plays as well. NBA, we got chaos in men's college basketball. Tons and tons of NFL, though, because it is wild card weekend. It is kicking off the playoffs. Yes, super wild card weekend. Thank you, young Steven. So 272 games in the books. We got 13 more left, including Super Bowl 58 in Las Vegas on February 11th. We got storylines galore. We're going to be taking trips down Narrative Street left and right, which, Steve, you absolutely love. So let's start with the first game of the weekend here. We got the Browns visiting the Texans. The Browns with Joe Flacco round and find out, facing rookie sensation C.J. Stroud. Which storyline here, young Steven, will have a playoff victory in its next chapter? That's what I want to know right now.
Going with the Texans. I am very excited to back the Texans in this game. There's a few reasons for that, too. Everybody has this perception that Joe Flacco has come in and he's been elite. And I'm not going to take anything away from him. He has looked fantastic since he's come back.
Dude, he's 5-0 on wild card weekend.
I don't care about that.
Okay.
I care about what's happening.
Stats from another decade.
Right. I care
it's
about.
True. He's got 9 years between playoff starts. That's the second largest gap ever.
That's why if someone's telling you about Joe Flacco's stats in wild cards, I'm just going to negate that because we need to talk about things that happened in this century.
Okay.
That being said,
fair enough.
That being said, Houston is a sneaky team, man.
Yeah, dude.
Offensively, they're great. Defensively, they're great. You actually look back at that graphic, they've actually been, by a very slight margin, at least points allowed per game, the better defensive team than the Browns.
Yeah.
We have this perception in our mind that the Browns are like this defensive juggernaut.
Yeah.
If you look at what they have allowed over the past month, 36 points to the Rams, 27 to the Jaguars. We know how that season went.
Yeah.
17 to the Bears, 22 to the Texans. Granted, they lost that game. 20 to the Jets. I think that the Texans are going to win this game outright, and there's a little stat that I came across that I was pretty shocked about, but it's very it's important to me. The Browns are allowing just under 30 points per game on the road. That is tied for the highest in the league. Going into Houston today, I like Texans.
Man, I mean, Buttes has kind of got me sold here, and I know we've already said that you guys are going to be on the same page a lot throughout this show. I mean, Josh, you on the same page with him right now?
I know, this is great. This is a great way to start the playoffs, Emerson. I'm going Houston Texans. Steve gave you a bunch of great reasons why. I'll go from the data analytics standpoint. What I like about the Texans, Emerson, number one, is they're the number one contrarian play of the wild card weekend. They're only getting 30% of bets. Wild card weekend, playoffs in general, it's a great time to bet against the public. All these games are super heavily bet. Tons of public bias to go against. But let's just look at what the line's done. It opened around Browns -2. At one point got up to Browns -3. But since that time, it's come back down to 2.5, down to 2. And that's important to me because if everyone's betting, Joe Flacco and the road team here, why is this line falling back toward Houston? Tells me we got some smart money on the Texans and the points. And here's where it gets good, Emerson. You best believe I got some wild card systems for you here, buddy.
Of course.
Wild card dogs since 2017 are 20-10 against the spread, 67%. If it's a dog who missed the playoffs the previous year, since 2017, they are 34-17 ATS, 67%. And here's the other thing.
Believe in them less. Steve's rolling his eyes over here.
I know.
Trying to translate why that's a system.
You are rolling your eyes.
But here's the thing, though, Steve.
Heavily.
Teaser play, too. The thing you got to remember about the postseason, these lines are really, really sharp. The odds makers have so much data to set these really good numbers, and typically they fall somewhere around the spread. So if you're able to tease up some of these dogs, since 2017, you tease up dogs 6 points. They're 24-6 against the spread, 80%. So you can tease up Houston. You can take the 2.5. Either way, I'm backing the Texans. I love this contrarian play with a lot of good system matches.
All right, Jules, like Steve has already mentioned too, like the Browns defense is not as good when it is on the road. But like Myles Garrett there, he's a Texas native. He's going to try to make the most of his first playoff game here. The key, I think, is going to be you got to protect C.J. Stroud. Texans 1-4 straight up when Stroud takes 4 sacks or more here.
This is Myles Garrett's first playoff game?
Yep.
Interesting. I know they were in it a couple years ago, the COVID year. All right, I'm going to take what these two guys said, kind of combine it, and it also spits out the Texans for me as a side in this game. Steve mentioned the defense. Everybody wants to talk about this Browns defense. It's very good, but it's the worst defense in the NFL in terms of points per game allowed on the road, tied with the Broncos, giving up 29.6 per game. It's 13.9 at home, the best in the NFL, the only team to allow less than 2 touchdowns per game at home. So night and day splits here, and it's been big chunk plays that has allowed those points on the road. Now, you could say that's fluky and that they're going to stop some of those plays against Houston, but the amount of big plays they've given up on the road to give up more than twice as many points in these road games with a whole season of data under our belts, I think that's telling. So you have the defense here. You have normally, the Browns kind of had a bye week last week to get their guys ready for this game, whereas Houston played. Normally, you would maybe not like that as much. I love this for Houston. It's a young team, first-time head coach. They need the experience. They basically went on the road and won a playoff game on Saturday night because that was a playoff game. They need that experience, that momentum under their belts coming into this game. And we look at the last time these two teams played. Cleveland won with good margin in Houston. The spread on that game was 3.5, and that was a Davis Mills Case Keenum game.
Just going to
You're
say,
going to tell me that the market
Stroud
that CJ Stroud is worth 1.5 points in this market, if you just want to relate it to strictly the numbers, strictly what players are worth in the market. I don't believe that at all. CJ Stroud's worth much more than that. Showed us a lot of grit in that game-winning drive, going 7 for 7 on the road to win that game in Indy. The Browns, first glance, it looks like the Browns, but everything that I look into in this game, more and more, I like Houston.
And just real quick, too, the amount of times that Flacco has turned the ball over. He's played 5 games. He has 8 interceptions in those games, but everybody is just kind of glossing over that because of, he's throwing for over 300 yards a game. He just came off the couch. He just came here. He's ready to play. He's looked good. But like anybody else, you'd be dissecting this and being, he's thrown for 8 interceptions in 5 games already.
The sample is so small on him, too. Like, if Flacco was just awful today, would that surprise anybody?
No. I don't think so.
No, I agree.
Especially with the amount of times that they're throwing now. Like, he's averaging over 42 dropbacks a game in a team, in an offense that was always a run-first offense. They've completely swapped and flipped the switch on the dynamic of this offense, which I think plays in favor of the Texans. Because, again, I think the Texans are a underrated defense coming into this one.
Yeah, and the Browns are favored in this one, which we've already mentioned multiple times. The first time they're favored to win a playoff game since the 94-95 season. We've mentioned the great play of Flacco. You just said and mentioned the turnovers for Joe Flacco through this incredible stretch that he's actually had coming off his mom's couch from watching football on Sundays here.
Like he has enough money that he doesn't live with his mom.
Yeah. So do you look at a Joe Flacco prop today? Maybe an interception?
You can do interceptions, but you can also do pass attempts. His pass attempts instead of 37.5. He's averaging 41 per game in the 5 games that he's played so far this season. Houston's been very good against the run, too, as well. And the Browns are not running the ball either. If you look at the carries averaged by the 2 running backs that are the main running backs on this team, you got Hunt averaging 9.2 carries per game, 4 with 11.2 carries per game. So I think we're just going to see a lot of throwing in this game once again. Flacco, 37.5 pass attempts. I like the over on that.
Okay.
I think there's another way to attack this, Emerson. Look at David Njoku. This is a guy that we've talked about pretty much every single week on the Sweats
Steve
in
has
September.
loved him throughout the season. Right?
He's been fantastic. The VSiN prop analyzer too will just show you the proof that playing these overs for Njoku all year. I think it was close to 65% in general. But Njoku over 54.5 receiving yards today. It's juiced up -125. Some liability here with that high juice to the over. He's gone over this number in 6 of his last 8 games. He's second on the team in targets with 123. Only Amari Cooper has more at 128. And since Flacco has taken over, Njoku's just gotten better. He's the security blanket for Flacco. Obviously, Flacco has a lot of playoff experience, but when your wideouts might be covered, Njoku's over the middle, I think he's going to get a lot of targets. I'm going Njoku over 54.5 yards.
He's averaging 78 per game with Flacco. Yeah.
I mean, the Texans have allowed more receptions to tight ends than anybody besides the Bengals. And only 4 teams have given up more yardage to the position. So you may be onto something there. Is there someone in the props department here, Jules? Are you thinking total? How many points will be scored here? What direction you want to go on?
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind the Flacco interception at all. It's minus 175, so you're paying some juice. But like you said, 8 in 5 games. He's thrown a pick in every game he's played this season. He threw 2 when he went to Houston last time, and that was a game they won 36-22. Right. What if they wind up playing from behind here, forcing a little bit more? So Flacco to throw an interception, I think, is fine. And then I'm going to Browns rushing unders. You look at what the Browns did on the ground. And again, this is a game they won in Houston 36-22. You think hand the ball off, grind the clock second half. Jerome Ford, 15 carries for 25 yards. Pierre Strong, 5 carries for 22 yards. Kareem Hunt, 7 carries for 11 yards. You go into the prop department. Jerome Ford under 42.5, I think, would be my favorite there. But Kareem Hunt is also up at 25.5. Lower prop, he should get fewer touches, though. I think Ford under 42.5 is a reasonable prop as well here.
Real quickly, Dalton Schultz under 41.5 receiving yards. Noah Brown's back. Robert Woods is back. The Browns have been one of the best defensive teams against opposing tight ends. I think the target share for Schultz comes down in this game.
All right, well, Steve, you and I will be catching up with Jonathan Alexander later in the show, who covers the Texans for the Houston Chronicle. So we'll get some more information from a troop on the ground there out in Houston as the Browns visit the Texans. Hey, coming up, massive slate in college basketball. Jules and Josh will help me break it down coming up in 3 minutes. Let's talk some men's hoops around the college game, baby. Let's do it. Top 10 matchups this weekend. So, by the way, on your screen, 4 of the top 5 teams, 6 of the top 11 have already taken a loss this week. Purdue, man, they're huge favorites today, Jules, against Penn State. So Houston's going to try to bounce back. We just saw Kansas losing to America's team, UCF. So that top 10 matchup against Oklahoma this afternoon at 2 o'clock. For some freaking reason, you have to stream that game. It's not on national television.
Yeah, that's an interesting one.
UConn was the only top 5 team that survived this past week. So they're going to face Georgetown. That's tomorrow. Tennessee at Georgia, a little SEC battle at high noon this afternoon. Josh is back as well. Let's start with that game of the day, guys. So the intensity level really should be high with both Oklahoma, 9th-ranked Oklahoma, and number 3 Kansas, looking for these bounce-back performances. So right now, Jules, which side are you backing here? It does seem like Oklahoma has a nice balance on offense. I think there's like 5 or 6 dudes who are averaging at least 6 points.
Nice balance, but that balance is going to be really tested going to the Fog in a big-time road game, rivalry game, and you've got Kansas in a good spot here. As you mentioned, they went on the road.
Yeah.
Interesting loss to UCF.
Why interesting? I mean, that was
Because
the first Big 12 victory for
UCF, Emerson.
Yeah.
It's
That's why I
interesting
went to college for 7 years.
Yeah, it's interesting because they're not that good, just as they weren't during your 7-year stretch there. That's true. Legendary run through the program. Didn't even have any COVID years back then, which makes it even more impressive. This is Kansas for me. I bet it laying 5.5 last night. Thought it would go this direction. It has. Now maybe it's getting right in that range. I would maybe look at it as a money line parlay piece. Knicks, really good piece in the NBA to money line parlay him with. We'll touch on that in our NBA segment later.
Okay.
But I just think bounce back spot for Kansas. We know how they are at home. Even when they don't cover, they always find ways like that TCU game to pull out these home games. They're 8-0 straight up at home, but just 3-4-1 against the spread. Oklahoma's been awesome on the road. They lost their, at home. They lost their only true road game. They played UNC. I see a similar result here. More talented overall team in Kansas getting the job done at home.
Josh, which team is most likely to bounce back today in this top 10 matchup?
So I think to Julian's credit, he got a great number here. Kansas open, minus 5.5. They've been steamed up here to 6.5, even 7. If you got the early number, you're feeling good. And here's a system match. If you do want to sweat Kansas, when you look at 2 ranked teams facing off here, just take the home favorite. Very simple, but it's 78-53 against the spread, 60% since 2021. If you take it a step further and look at 2 top 10 teams playing each other, take the favorite. That's 72% ATS over the last 2 years. But for me, when I look at these bet splits, it scares me that Kansas is so popular. They're getting, across the market right now, nearly 90% of bets. So if you're going with Kansas, obviously you love those system matches, but you're getting the worst of the number and the most public, heavily bet game of the day. To me, as a contrarian, that's just a place that I can't go to now. So I'd look at maybe buying low on Oklahoma. If you can find that +7, I wouldn't call Oklahoma a sharp bet, but to me it's a value play and an inflated line off the opener. It's your top contrarian play of the day, and Ken Pom only has Oklahoma losing by 4 points. So again, you got it early, you're feeling good, you're beating the closing line. At this point, I'd buy low on Sooners +7.
All right, guys, then there's John Calipari's Kentucky Wildcats. So they're tearing through their conference schedule here to begin the season. They've won 6 consecutive games and now head to College Station to take on the Texas A&M Aggies. How much trouble could Texas A&M, Josh, give the Wildcats here? Could they snap their streak?
A lot of trouble. I love Texas A&M here, Emerson. This is a trust the data, trust the market system play for me. Let me ask you a couple of questions, Emerson.
Please do.
If Kentucky's 12-2 and they're ranked 6th in the country and they've won 6 straight, and A&M is only 9-6 and they're unranked and they've lost 2 straight, then why is A&M favored here today?
You tell me,
that
big man.
That makes no sense, right? Embrace the fishy side, take the line that makes no sense. This is a really sharp play toward Texas A&M. This game opened like a pick'em. I saw one book that was Kentucky -1. Another book was Kentucky +1. Either way, this line has moved toward A&M. They're all the way up to -2.5, and that's notable because everyone's playing Kentucky. Kentucky right now is getting across the board over 80% of bets. This would be a great fade the trendy dog opportunity. Again, seems like it's an easiest bet in the world to take Kentucky here. But why is the line going toward A&M if everyone's betting Kentucky? Unranked home favorites versus ranked opponents. Julian knows this system. It's great in college basketball and college football. That's 64% against the spread since 2017. I moneylined A&M. I love this fishy play. Let's go Aggies.
All right, Jules, a lot of public bettors are going to run to the window this morning here to take the Cats in this game. Is that a massive mistake?
I don't know if it is. So I'm well aware of the system. I'm well aware of what these unranked home teams do, Kentucky might be the team this year that defies this type of system. We had this exact conversation last week. Florida growing home favorite against Kentucky. I said, I can't get there on this one. It's Kentucky or pass. Kentucky wins a really hard-fought game down at the Swamp and beats Florida. We're in the same spot here, and the same thing is happening. A&M is growing as a favorite. I waited for Kentucky to get to about 3.5 last week. I might wait for Kentucky to get to 3.5 this week and do the same thing. They're going to slip up in a couple of these home games, but every time they play a good team on the road in the SEC, this is going to be the case. And I think if you regardless of today's outcome or last week's outcome, I think if you bet Kentucky in each of these spots throughout the course of the season, you're going to make more money doing that than betting the sharp home team in these spots. I think Kentucky's that type of team. The talent, the coaching, they're going to come through in more of these spots. A&M has a lot of talent, good guard play, but the bigs aren't very good. Kentucky has a lot of size, and the three-point shooting's been abysmal for A&M. They lost to FAU. They lost to Virginia. They lost to Memphis. They lost to Houston. They come back with wins over Houston Christian and Prairie View, and then lose to a terrible LSU squad and an Auburn squad. A&M might just be overrated and be bad, and I know that Kentucky is good. So I think, if this was a Tennessee or a team that I believed more in, I would say, yeah, go with the home team. I'm going to do the same thing I did last week with the Gators. I'm going to wait for the money to pile in, or sharp money to pile in on A&M, and then take the Gators, take the Wildcats with as many points as I can get.
I mean, you're talking about a situation where a team may be overrated. How about we look at a conference like the Mountain West that may be underrated?
We're going to the pit.
Yeah, let's do it, dude. All right, we're talking San Diego State and New Mexico here. I mean, we're talking a conference. It's going to be like a 6-bid league here for the NCAA tournament here, and two of those teams are going to be clashing here. Who has the advantage?
The home team has the advantage. 14-2 overall for San Diego State, but 3-2 away, 1-4 against the spread on the road. They haven't played that many great teams away, but I played Grand Canyon against San Diego State when they were on the road. Grand Canyon, the Antelopes, team I like a lot this year, got that win outright. Now I'm going with New Mexico. Again, this one's moving. I played this one last night. It was -2 on DK. I think we're up to 3.5. I'll lay 3.5 with New Mexico. This is a really good spot for them at home. They're 8-0 at home. They're 6-1 against the spread at home. One of those games didn't have a market because of the team that they were playing, being D2, I think. But I think New Mexico is in a really good spot here at home. Two pretty even teams, but the home court advantage is everything in this spot. Like I said, Saturday afternoon game against a big-time team that just went to the national championship game at the Pit. This team has talent. Eddie House's son on the team. Jamal Mashburn's son, Jamal Mashburn Jr. on the team. Great guard play. That's what you want in a game like this.
Josh, what are your sexy systems telling you?
Yeah, right there with Julian. New Mexico, to me, is a great play. It's really kind of the same spot that Texas A&M is in when you look at an unranked home favorite
New
versus ranked
Mexico's
opponent.
Good and A&M might not be.
But here's the thing, Julian. You got to play every system match. You can't pick and choose when you play this system
I pick
here.
and choose. I think I'm smarter than the systems for some reason.
Well, I'll stick with the systems here. But with this spot, New Mexico, again, you open this thing -2.5, -3. You're up to 3.5. Public's all over San Diego State. They're great at home, as Julian mentioned, 8-0 at home. And you look at the bet splits here, really drastic bets versus dollars discrepancy. On the money line, only 29% bets, 60% money. On the spread, 57% bets, 95% of the money. So again, if you have San Diego State 14-2, ranked 9th, 1-7 straight, versus New Mexico, who is unranked, why did it open? And here's another tip. And Julian, we talked about this earlier. When you see this system match, unranked home favorite, ranked opponent, play it immediately. You'll know who's opening as a favorite. For example, this was as low as like -130 money line at the opener. Yeah. Now it's all the way up to -175. But I love New Mexico in this spot.
All right, Jules, the Horned Frogs here don't get long to savor their Oklahoma win. They got an angry pack of Cougars coming to Fort Worth.
What a scenario.
Yeah, there you go. I mean, Houston, one of those top 5 teams that lost this week. So your play in this game is what? Tonight at 6 o'clock.
TCU. I'll take the points with the home dog. TCU's been really good. Like you mentioned, knock off Oklahoma. Went right down to the wire at Kansas, arguably the toughest building in college basketball to win in. Now they're playing a Houston team that, yes, they're off a loss at Iowa State, but welcome to the Big 12, Houston. You're not in the AAC anymore. You're going to have to play really tough Big 12 road games, and this is one of them against a really good team. Love TCU at home here. Played at +5.5 last night. It moved. A lot of these move overnight, but still like it with the points.
Josh, quickly here, Alabama, Mississippi State.
Yeah, looking toward Mississippi State in this one. This is a 50-50 bet split. Yet the line's going to Mississippi State. More than half the, only 50% bets, but 60% money is on Mississippi State. I know we're up against it, guys. Let me give you one more. UNLV. Okay. UNLV is in a great spot tonight against Utah State. Take the points there. I think it's going to be UNLV win outright.
All right, we'll stay on the hardwood, but we'll kick it up a notch. We'll go to the association. We got the Warriors. We got the Bucks clashing tonight. Which team is ready to pull the dub and start their latest winning streak? All right, nice meaty slate around the association tonight. We're going to split this thing up into two. So we'll talk kind of the first half right now, and these 4 games on your screen. So Rockets at the Celtics, Wizard at the Hawks, Magic and Thunder colliding. That is an under-the-radar, sexy matchup. Warriors at the Bucks as well. Both those teams snapping their skids last time out. But I want to start in our backyard here with the Celtics and Ime Udoka making his return to Boston here, bringing the Rockets along with him, Jules. So the Celtics, I don't know, is there going to be an extra motivation factor here to make sure they don't lose to the coach who they fired after the scandal?
I don't think so, but they're just 18-0 at home, and they're going to win this game
Pretty
anyway.
damn good at home.
They have
They
grown
covered the 16.
They have grown from 14 and a half on the opener to 16-point favorites in this game. I'm not going to lay 16. I have a little bit more respect for Houston than that. But Celtics just got mopped in Milwaukee on Thursday night. Didn't even play the starters in the second half. It was that bad at halftime. I think they're going to come out sharp here, as they always do at home. So for me, really, when the number is playable on the first half, I lay it. This is a big one, so I might just look for them to click offensively. Everybody's going to play in this game. Celtics first half team total has been something I've been on for about a year and a half now, and this is a really good spot for it. Houston played last night, just barely survived the Pistons in Detroit. Now they come into Boston. Celtics have been home off of the Milwaukee loss. I think when you lose like that, they're going to come out on I almost said Friday night, Saturday night, looking to click here. They're going to put up points. The team total for the game, I don't think we have a first half team total yet. Team total for the game is 122.5. So I think we're looking something like 62.5 range here probably, and we will go over that.
I mean, Josh, the Rockets have just been particularly bad on the road this season against the team that is perfect at home. Is there any reason to really overthink this?
I don't think so, but I would say I don't mind laying the big points here. Typically, I'm not a big fan of laying huge spreads like this, but I'll give you a couple of reasons why Celtics could cover this number. One, favorites off a blowout loss. Celtics looked terrible in Milwaukee. It was kind of a schedule spot where they just didn't show up. Missoula pulled everyone. They didn't play the second half. Favorites off a blowout loss of 20 points or more come back the next game and cover 57% of the time over the last 5 seasons. Fading teams on the second leg of a back-to-back. Houston's in a tough spot here tonight because they played yesterday. That system is 56% ATS the last 5 years. Look at the bet splits for this game. There's only 56% of bets on Boston, but they're taking into account 75% of the money. And again, they open as low as 12.5, 14.5. They're all the way up to almost 16. You can still find that 15.5. I would consider laying the points here with Boston. And then also, I would lean under here. There's a really good bet split to the under. Only 20% bets, but 76% of the money is going under. It opened as high as 231. You're down to 228.5, 228. This thing continues to fall. And one thing we know about Udoka, great defensive coach here. You look at the Rockets, they're the top 5 in terms of unders. They are a slower pace, number 3 defensive efficiency. I could see a lower scoring game here. Celtics blowout win. I'm leaning toward laying the points and going under.
Jules, how have the Oklahoma City Thunder been able to put together a season where at this point they're the second best team in the Western Conference right now?
Yeah, that young talent's finally starting to come together, and they have the draft picks to do whatever they want to do at the trade deadline if they so choose, or just save them for future seasons. They're in as good a spot. They're in as good a spot, really, as any franchise in the NBA, besides probably the Celtics. Maybe the Clippers because of how well they're playing in the window right now, but OKC's set up as well as anyone.
And hosting the Magic tonight, who are another surprise team, currently the 8th seed in the East, obviously not as high as they want to be, but still, they've got some young talent that are absolutely balling out of their minds.
Yeah, Orlando's solid. The spread kind of tells you the story here. Orlando played last night, double-digit spread now going to OKC. Who's going to play, who's not? I kind of think that, with some of these younger teams, like Orlando should still just be able to bounce back and play all their guys, which makes me think this number's a little high. They probably, I would assume, confirms they're playing some of their guys, and this comes down to maybe a 10 or a 9.5. This is a pass game for me just because the number is so... I like OKC. They should win this game at home. The number being this big is a little bit alarming. I'll stay away. But 2 good teams in terms of the future markets this season.
How soon until we see Draymond Green return for the Warriors?
Should ask Steve Kerr. I have no idea.
Yeah.
We got to get his head right. Apparently that's
Conditioning,
there, and now he's doing the conditioning part.
Yeah.
I don't think that's going to make that much of an impact.
It's another big spread like on the board tonight.
So this one, that would be Milwaukee first half or pass for me. The Bucks have been the best first half home team in the NBA. They're 15-6 against the first half spread. You look at the Warriors on the road. They are they're 10-6 against the spread. Sorry, they're really bad at home, the Warriors, but they were down 13 at half in Chicago last night, and then blew doors in the second half. But the back-to-back here, older team, I think we still see Milwaukee come out and play pretty well out of the gates here.
And Josh, you said you got to play for Wizards at the Hawks.
Yeah, just a quick player prop here. I really like Saddiq Bey over 21.5 points, rebounds, and assists. It's juiced up minus 125 to the over. He's gone over this number in 3 straight games. This is also the highest total on the board. It's over 250. I think it's like 251. Expect a lot of offense here. And really, Washington, they are terrible defensively. They're dead last in defensive efficiency. And Saddiq Bey is actually 3rd most minutes on the team. So I'm going Saddiq Bey over 21.5 PRA.
All right, second half of the slate that we're going to focus on right now. Knicks at the Grizzlies, Pelicans at the Mavs here, Bulls at the Spurs, Lakers at the Jazz. Much tighter spreads here in these 4 games compared to the first half we just discussed here, Jules. Is there a game that really gets your juices flowing here from a betting perspective?
Knicks at Grizzlies. The Grizzlies could not be more dinged up and in a worse spot. I know they're at home. They played at home last night and got smashed by the Clippers. So home back-to-back, you eliminate the travel a little bit better. But John Morant done for the year. Then Marcus Smart hurts his finger.
They looked like a different team with him back. It's really unfortunate they lost him.
That was a gut punch. They beat Dallas without him, but since then they've looked pretty poor. Next game, Marcus Smart goes out 4 to 6 weeks. Last night, Desmond Bane rolls an ankle. I would expect him to sit on the second half of back-to-back. There's no scoring left. The Knicks might not have Brunson, but I'll lay the 8 with the Knicks here. And then like I teased in the college hoops segment, give me, I know the number in Kansas, Oklahoma has really grown. Give me a Kansas Knicks money line parlay. Those are 2 of my favorite teams to win outright today.
All right, and Josh, don't look now or do. What, the Jazz on a 4-game win streak? Teams that they've beaten? The 76ers on the road, the Bucks on the road. They beat the Nuggets at home and then just knocked off the Raptors at home. And now they host the Lakers tonight. The boys out in the Beehive State are back.
They are. Danny Ainge, he's got them playing great right here. So I would take the points with the Jazz in this one. This game opened, Lakers as high as -2.5, -2. It's down to 1.5. I see a couple books maybe even going to 1. So this line continues to plummet in favor of the Jazz, even though the public is still sweating LeBron and the Lakers. But I'm really interested in the total here, Emerson. I think you get a very high scoring game here. I'm going to go over 238 if you can still find it. It opened at around 237. You're up to 238. Some books even going maybe to 238.5. But if you look at the bet splits here, only 62% bets, but nearly 90% of the money is on the over. When the total is 230 or more, the over is nearly 55% this season. And if you look at the pace of play, Lakers are 7th, Utah Jazz are 10th, so these are both top 10 pace of play, more possessions, more opportunity to score, and the Utah Jazz, 23rd defensive efficiency. So I think you get a tight game. I would lean with the points here with the Jazz, and I'm going to take that over, maybe looking for a 125 to 122 game.
One quick thing on this game, got to watch out for both sides. The Lakers have LeBron and AD questionable. I'm wondering if the number's coming down from 2.5 to 1.5 because they're leaning towards not playing or because bettors just like this hot Jazz team right now. But if they play, watch out for Utah, who had the big win last night over Toronto. Mm-hmm. It's a home back-to-back like Memphis, so you eliminate the travel. Things are different. But watch out if Utah does wind up resting anybody. That kind of flips the script here. And in a pick-em type of game, I would like the Lakers if their guys play and a starter or 2 for Utah sits.
I mean, if you would have told me like a month ago that a month later, the Jazz would be ahead of the Lakers in the standings. The Jazz sitting at 10, the Lakers 11. I would have said, nah, dude.
But the Lakers already won the championship. They got the
in-season
tournament.
The in-season tournament.
In the in-season tournament, the Lakers beat the Jazz by like 40, by the way.
Oh.
Ooh, so that's Buchanan revenge angle then.
Yeah. You maybe look at some Wemby props or anything for the Spurs game. Isn't he coming off his first trip?
He's not playing. So.
Oh, he's not playing? Okay.
Yeah.
I know he's
Good question, though.
Yeah, thank you. He's coming off his first triple-double of the season. Is there anything, though, in that Bulls Spurs game that you like?
Maybe the Bulls because, I mean, both teams played last night. Now it's a road back-to-back for the Bulls. At some point, we can maybe get back to Kobe White props. He was so good without Zach LaVine. I'm not there yet. Ultimately, a couple leans in this game, probably a pass.
All right, Josh.
I'd lean a little bit to the over here. If you look at this matchup, the Spurs, even without Wembanyama, I mean, they are just fast up and down the court. Decent offense, but terrible defense. Popovich must be, pulling his hair out here because he can't get this team to play the way he wants them to. But this total opened around 225.5. It's up to 226.5. Really good bet split to this over. Currently, you're getting 78% bets, over 90% money on the over. And non-conference overs have been a great angle. That lack of familiarity benefits the offense. I'd lean over Bulls Spurs.
All right, you two take a break. We're going to reward your 10 minutes of work with like a 15-minute break or so. We are going to talk the frozen tundra out there in Kansas City. But first, we're going to help you build a money-making lineup when Pierce and Jeff join the program coming up here in 4 minutes. let's get back to Super Wildcard Weekend around the NFL, kicking off later this afternoon around 4 o'clock Eastern Time. We've done the betting thing up to this point. We'll do more of that for Miami and Kansas City coming up next. But right now, let's help you build a money-making lineup on DraftKings, talking DFS right now. So there are tons of contests to choose from. Millionaire contest today, tomorrow, Monday. But right now, we're going to do the entire 6-game slate. So from today to Monday, $15. Enter this contest, the NFL 500K special. First place, you're taking home $100,000. So you have questions. These two have answers. DraftKings Network contributors. We got Jeff Ulrich. We have Pierce Dietrich here on the horn. Gentlemen, damn good to see you on this Saturday morning. So let's start with the most important position in sports, Jeff, and that would be quarterback. So out of the 6 dudes to choose from here, who are you going with under center? How much money you want to spend?
It's between quarterback and kicker. I mean, I was a 50-50 chance to be right there. I mean, I want to spend quite a bit. Got Dak Prescott at 7,600 going up against the Packers. Packers have a terrible defensive coordinator. Dak Prescott's averaging 26.8 DK fantasy points at home this year. This guy loves playing in Dallas. He's got great home splits. Again, Green Bay, nice little run to get in the playoffs. Jaire Alexander now injured again. Just opens up the field for a guy like CeeDee Lamb if Jaire Alexander is not out there able to cover the other opposing teams. Obviously, wide receiver 1. I think Prescott's in a really good spot. If you have the cash to pay up, Prescott is easily the safest option. Obviously, don't mind targeting those guys in the Detroit Rams game either, but Prescott would be my preferred option.
Okay, so 6 games, 12 quarterbacks here, Pierce. Which one tickles your fancy, big man?
How is Jeff not going with Joe Flacco? This is the Nick Foles story. This is the sequel to the Nick Foles story. This is probably even better. Scored 17 fantasy points off the couch a couple weeks ago. He's been basically a mid-20s performer. It's unbelievable. He's scoring plenty of points, averaging over 300 passing yards per game, 13 touchdowns in just the handful of games that he's played in. I'm not crazy about facing the Houston pass rush, but the Browns' pass protection has been pretty solid. We've got a dome. We're going to avoid bad weather. The biggest concern with playing Flacco, and there's great savings here, is just that you're taking a guy on Saturday and you're not going to have the ability to line up swap. But other than that, Flacco, lock him in.
Yeah, Flacco, I think the third cheapest of the 12 starting quarterbacks, so $6,100. It is shocking, Jeff, you chose not to go in that direction, but what direction do you want to go in when we're talking wide receiver here?
First of all, I mean, extremely solid Nick Foles reference by Pierce there. Yeah. No argument there. I'm going to go with Puka Nacua at 7,200. This is not going to be a fair fight against the Lions secondary. We saw what Nick Mullins and Justin Jefferson did last week. And you can say, oh, Puka Nacua isn't Justin Jefferson. Well, he just broke the rookie receiving record, so maybe he actually is Justin Jefferson. I can say one thing for sure. Matthew Stafford is better than Nick Mullins. Lions secondary is not good. They have not been good all year. They tried to get their safety rotation down pat, and they played all their starters last week. They just ended up getting more guys hurt. This is going to be an absolute nightmare scenario for them. Going up against a big, tall wide receiver in Nacua. You've got Cooper Kupp to worry about, in the short field and in the red zone. But I think Nacua is the guy who's going to get the yards here. He's been getting yards down the stretch for the Lions. At 7,200, I think he's too cheap. I really do. Obviously, I like all the receivers in this game, and you should like Amon-Ra St. Brown too. But at 7,200, I think Nacua is too cheap. You need him in the lineup for sure.
Is there a no-brainer selection here for you at wide receiver, Pierce?
Yeah, it's another receiver in that game. I'm surprised Jeff didn't mention Demarcus Robinson. Everyone is going to play Robinson at $3,600. You look at the last 5 weeks, he's scoring between 14 and 20 fantasy points every single game, and yet somehow he's still only 3,600. I don't think I've ever seen a player fly this far under the radar ever. Well, he's not under the radar anymore. The alerts, the red flags are going off. Everyone is going to play him. Again, you've got the dome. You've got a great matchup. I was talking on here weeks ago about how the Rams are poised and primed to go on another big run. The offense looks really good. It's a good matchup. It even got revenge narratives in it. I love everybody in this game.
All right, let's get to the backfield here. You mentioned the dome matchup, receivers thriving, quarterbacks thriving. But, Jeff, there's also been a lot of discussion about some of the nasty weather we're going to see in some of these games. So maybe it's a lot of running backs seeing a lot of touches. Which guy do you like?
Aaron Jones, 6,300. Aaron Jones is basically the motor that runs the Green Bay Packers. You look at their win-loss record when Aaron Jones is in and out of the lineup, the splits are severe. They're a really good team when Aaron Jones is running and healthy and can do everything out of the backfield. He's going to be on the field a ton in this game because A.J. Dillon is doubtful. And I mean, quite frankly, the Packers should just sit A.J. Dillon anyways because they need to play Aaron Jones every snap to have a chance in this game. But at 6,300, I mean, you look at what Aaron Jones has done down the stretch as well. I mean, 20 plus carries in 3 straight games. I mean, over 100 yards rushing in 3 straight games. And even if he doesn't get there as a rusher, I mean, 5 for 5 catching the ball. This guy is always just an explosive screen pass away from breaking a 50-yard touchdown or something. Aaron Jones is too cheap. I know the Packers are underdogs, but again, just a guy I think you need in your lineup this weekend.
All right, Pierce, you seem to be going the value route with a lot of these positions. What do you want to do at running back?
Yeah, let's go a little bit cheaper with Devin Singletary at 5,700. 16 carries for 80 yards 2 weeks ago. Last week, 24 carries for 63 yards. Now, the yardage wasn't that great, but you cannot deny this volume. He's got 30 receptions on the season. Again, not crazy about playing Saturday games because you can't line up swap, but you do have the advantage of a dome. He's clearly the number 1 running back. And what the real kicker here is, you look at the Browns. They are terrible on the road. At home, they only allow, 3.7 yards per carry, 5 touchdowns. On the road, that jumps up to 4.7, 4.9. They've given up 10 touchdowns. At home, they're the lowest scoring defense. No one scores on the Browns at home. On the road, they somehow magically turn into the worst defense, allowing 29 points per game. We've got a large enough sample size to say that there's something here that they're going on. They just don't play well. The Texans are going to score points. Singletary will probably be a part of that.
Yeah, I think that's why all of our guys earlier in the show really like the Texans today to kind of win outright, considering how bad the Browns are, how different that defense is on the road. It's also a reason why Josh kind of likes the spot that David Njoku is in today because of how many receiving yards and receptions the Texans give up to the tight end position here. What do you guys want to do in DFS for this 6-game all super wild card weekend slate? Pierce.
Yeah, that's where I'm going to go with Njoku. I'm saving on the other positions, and a lot of people like to save on tight end and pay up elsewhere. So I'll go a little bit contrarian and Stacko with Flacco. He's been absolutely awesome with Flacco. And I mean, he's been great all season. He scored over 10 fantasy points in 10 of 11 games this year. He's finally had his breakout. He's absolutely exploded since Flacco has taken over, a guy who has consistently thrown the ball to the tight end over his career. I worry about playing all these guys on Saturday, but at the same time, if the Browns and the Texans play well on Saturday, then that's going to force other DFS players to be more aggressive, take the low probability plays by doing late swap. And so, maybe having a big Saturday is going to be an advantage for me.
I mean, Jeff, there's no way you're going top of the board with Travis Kelce. Just had a really down couple of games, 3 games really. 4.6 fantasy points, 9.4, 7.8. Really hasn't done much at all this season.
I mean, I do like Kelce, to be honest, in this spot. Miami's not been great against the tight ends lately at all, but I will go with Dallas Goedert as my choice, 4,800. I mean, look, both of the top wide receivers for the Eagles are banged up. Maybe they both play. Devonta Smith looks like he's going to play. I do not think either are going to be near 100%. Certainly A.J. Brown, if he plays, not going to be 100%. But Dallas Goedert in a spot at 4,800, he could push for 10 targets in this game. He really could. And at under 5,000, that's way too valuable not to take. Tampa Bay, their defense has played better. Their secondary is still very gettable. Goddard after the catch as well. I mean, he's certainly capable of a 100-yard game in this spot. I think Dallas Goedert, I think Njoku's a great pick as well. I mean, 5,600. I like all of the top 3 tight ends if you take out Sam Laporta, who's very questionable to even play. But I think Goddard's the best value. Under 5,000 against Tampa Bay, it just doesn't seem right given the situation that we're getting with the top 2 wide receivers for the Eagles probably out.
All right, Jeff, let's go quick here then on defense. We know how bad Philly has been playing. That Bucs defense, you just mentioned, been good and bad at times. What do you want to target at DST?
I mean, I'm just going to go extremely gross and go with the Pittsburgh Steelers at 2,600. Josh Allen turns the ball over so much. Pittsburgh's had 12 or more DK fantasy points in 2 of their last 3 games, so I'll go with the Steelers. And that game's just going to be the one's going to be.
Yeah, I know. They're paying fans to come clean up the stadium and stuff with all the snow. Pierce.
Take the Chiefs. Miami is notorious for struggling in cold weather, and this is extreme cold weather. Tua has never won in below freezing temperatures, and this is really below freezing.
Okay.
So Chiefs in the weather.
All right, we'll break it down from a sports betting perspective. That game coming up next. All right, welcome back to The Sweat, everybody, as we kick off the second hour of said program. So we got a couple writers, one from Kansas City coming up. He's going to be joining us, one from the Texans. So we're going to be breaking down those two games with guys who have been covering those two teams all season long. Right now, let's break down Miami and the Chiefs from a sports betting perspective right now. And there is just so much talk. You can look at all these numbers like on the screen right now, but you almost want to throw them out the window a little bit, maybe, Steve, considering the weather that we're going to see here. It's been the discussion all season, or really all week long, rather, and how cold it could be. And as we look at the coldest games in NFL history, -13 with the wind chill of -48 back on New Year's Eve 1967, Green Bay and Dallas. Temperatures tonight are expected to be as low as -12 during the game with the wind chill that could give off the feeling of -32 degrees. Would you sit in a game that cold?
No. That's why,
they're out of the 6 Super Wild Card games this weekend, this is the cheapest ticket, which is surprising.
You can get into the game for like $30, $40, which is like absurd to think about. A Kansas City Chiefs game at home, you can get in for that cheap. I'd love to get a line for how many dislocated fingers potentially in this game. To catch the ball, those frozen ice block that's going to be coming your way. But this game, I'm honestly surprised that we're still getting as high as a total as we are in this one at 43.5. Like, this feels like a game that could really sail under here. And especially, too, when you consider the Chiefs have been a horrific over team this season. It has been so bad. They are 1-7 to the over at home this season. It's been really bad for the Chiefs when it comes to that there. But on a normal basis, like if all things was equal here, this would be a matchup that you would think that Patrick Mahomes would carve up. When you think of all the injuries that are on the Miami Dolphins right now, coming into this game, they're going to be down defensively. Chubb, Van Ginkel, Phillips, Xavier Howard on defense, likely looking like he's going to be playing here. But between the weather and just the overall poor play of the Chiefs the entire season, I don't even feel confident that Mahomes would be able to do that in this game. So I see this total here, 43.5, really hasn't changed much either, which I'm surprised about. I'm taking the under in this game.
How big of an advantage? Because it's been discussed before, it's been a topic of conversation all week long, just how bad the Dolphins are in cold weather climates, especially just under 40 degrees. I think they've lost like their last 10 games here, Josh.
Yeah, Emerson, I got it for you. Dolphins since 2017, when the temperature's below 40 degrees, they're 0-9 straight up, 2-7 against the spread. So I bet they wish they were still in South Beach for this game and not at Frozen Arrowhead.
Well, hell, if they would have won last week, we would be in the balmy temperature of South Beach right now.
Exactly. And we have seen Emerson, this line, move toward Kansas City. It opened as low as, -3, -3.5. It was up to 4.5. I just saw it go to -5
last night.
Yeah, so it's steaming right now, Steven. It's a pretty good bet split when you look at this. Only 55% bets, but 70% of the money is going with Kansas City here. And I think the other advantage is in terms of Kansas City having rested their starters in Week 18. I think that was a smart decision. They had nothing to play for. They won the game anyway because the Chargers are so bad. But you got a lot of these guys a little bit extra time versus, look at the other side, and Steve mentioned it, rattled off all those names. So many injuries on the Miami side. So this is a play that, was a great money line bet when it opened, as low as -150, -175. It's a little pricey for me right now. But what I'm going to do is I'm going with Steve. I'm going under here. It opened closer to 45. It's down to 43.5. When I woke up this morning, some books are at 44. So game day movement is toward this under. And I don't think it's because of the cold. If you look at a lot of the data, there's actually somewhat of an angle to go contrarian cold overs, but it's the wind. It's not that it's freezing, it's the wind. The wind's going to be around 15 miles per hour. In the postseason, unders are 59% since 2017. And if you look at when the wind blows 10 miles per hour or more since 2017, the under in the playoffs is 10-4, 71%. So I'm going to go under here.
And in AFC wildcard games over the last 2 postseasons, the over is 5-1. But we're also not talking about games with historically low temperatures, Jules.
Yeah, this is my favorite game of the weekend for betting purposes. And you say what you want about, cold doesn't factor into totals. We don't really have data on this type of cold. So when we don't have data and it's that rare, I'll probably say that it's going to be as bad as we think it's going to be, or as impactful as we think it's going to be, especially for a team like the Dolphins. Miami, 0-9 straight up, 2-7 against the spread in their last 9 games played when it's 40 degrees or colder. If the wind chill gets down to minus 30, this is 70 degrees cold. Feels like 70 degrees colder than 40 degrees. That's hard to do. It's going to be freezing. Throw a little bit of wind into that mix, and it's really going to mess things up there in Kansas City. So yes, I'm on under 44 in this game, but I think I like the Chiefs even more than I like the under in this game. Obviously, Mahomes has never lost in the wild card round. It's a little contrarian maybe to back this Chiefs team after they've stumbled time after time this year. I'm not expecting that much from them, but I'm expecting enough. What it really comes down to is how bad this spot is for the Dolphins. Dolphins can't beat good teams. They went 1-5 straight up and against the spread against teams that finished the year with a record above 500. That only win was a walk-off field goal at home against the Cowboys, who had a losing record on the road this season. They win at Jerry World. So Miami's really going to have to prove it to me here on, like Josh said, it's almost like Kansas City's coming off a bye. Don't forget, Miami's on a short week. They just played an impactful, almost playoff-like game.
They had to play all their starters
on Sunday Night Football, playing their starters down to the wire. Now go on a short week Saturday night game on the road to Kansas City. This is as bad a spot as you could ask for Miami. I think Kansas City, give me Andy Reid and Mahomes off a semi-bye at home. They're going to find a way to get this done.
Yeah, and in terms of like maybe...
Oh, sorry, real quick. Third play. It's Kansas City, the under. I'll same game parlay Kansas City money line since it's moved with under 47.5. That was plus 135 when I put it out on DraftKings Network.
No Tyreek Hill props on your card and his first return to Arrowhead?
No 3 bets for me in this game will be enough.
I will say, though, like, if there is any of the Miami receivers that are built for this, it would be him. He's played in these type of games before with Kansas City. So, you know, while it's going to affect everybody, I would feel like maybe with Tyreek Hill, it would have the least amount of effect on him.
Sorry, 4th bet in the game.
Oh, here we go, baby.
Are you going to player props?
Yeah, go ahead.
I'll start us with player props. Pacheco over 65.5 rushing. Miami was solid against the run overall this season. They finished 7th in rushing yards allowed. Don't let that fool you. They gave up 118 rushing yards per game on the road this season. Last 3 games of the season, they gave up 128 yards per game on the ground. Factor in the conditions, what this could mean for the passing game, and Kansas City being a home favorite. Pacheco should be in for a good workload here. I think he's going to have a good game.
Yeah, so is the running game something you would target, considering it's going to be minus a bajillion degrees?
I think that is a good way to target it, Emerson, because, again, if it's windy, you're going to run the ball more, you're going to chew up the clock. That's going to lead toward the unders. And, again, if it's really windy, maybe you have some missed kicks. Maybe you're not going to throw it as much. Again, Mahomes, we can talk about kind of how he's used to the weather. Again, this is an extreme situation. So, to Julian's point, we don't have a ton of data on when it's this cold. But one passing prop jumped out to me because, again, the game theory here is it's going to be a lot of running, low-scoring game. Everyone's going to be freezing cold. However, Rashee Rice is really juiced up toward his over. 62.5 receiving yards is over minus 125. In a game where we think it's going to be hard to throw the ball, again, these guys' hands are going to be freezing cold. They're going to be like ice blocks. How are they going to make these catches and put up big numbers? Well, the odds makers at DraftKings think that Rashee Rice could have a big game. That over 62.5, again, juiced up over. He's gone over this number in 5 of his last 6. He also rested last week, so he's got some extra rest. He's a rookie. Again, you can kind of hit the rookie wall. Maybe that was a good breather for him. And the last time we saw Rice against Cincinnati, he had 127 yards. He's second on the team in targets. If you're going to play one prop here to me and target a Kansas City receiver, it's Rashee Rice over 62.5.
I see you're nodding your head in agreement, Steve.
Yeah, no, I'm with Josh there because especially when you look to like Mahomes is not connecting with these guys deep downfield like MVS, Justin Watson. You know, Watson's caught a couple there, but MVS
he's connecting with MVS. MVS is just denying the connection.
But it's been abysmal for him there. You look at Rice, like his average distance of target is just over 5.2. Like those are the type of throws you are going to be seeing in those games. So if you look at his receptions too, it's 6.5 right there. It's plus 114 for the over on that one there. But this is somebody who's had at least 7 receptions in 4 of his last 6 games, which has really been his coming out party the past the last month and a half or so. So even though obviously the play is under, well, that's where a lot of the money is, I do like going over on this one here. If we get those quick, throws there to Rice, Kelsey should be in the mix too, especially if Javon Holland is not going to be in this game if he ends up being ruled out. So, but I would be going with Rice here. That has been like literally the only guy that Mahomes has been able to trust in this offense here. So if they need to be in those throwing situations, that's probably the guy he's going to.
Yeah, this is the first game too that's being streamed exclusively on, right? Like it's crazy.
You gotta figure out how to watch this tonight. Come on.
You got to get Peacock.
You have to have Peacock to watch this game.
Why do they do this to us?
We're all in the age.
What do you mean? You don't have Peacock? It's like $5 a
Throwing
month.
the remotes through the TVs, trying to find the streaming games.
What's that?
Nothing. I was talking to Steve.
He's basically saying that we're getting to the age now.
Steve and I were having dad talk over here.
Yeah.
Oh,
well,
yeah,
you two
yeah.
dog dads.
No. Can you imagine this past week too? It's like all the parents, all the grandparents, like we're all receiving like texts and calls and potentially emails about like, hey,
your dad's gonna call you at 8 o'clock.
Oh, 1,000%. Actually, I don't know. It is a landline phone still. It is a landline phone. Anyone expect Travis Kelce to have a good game tonight?
I mean, again, like there is a potential that Holland's not playing in this game.
Yeah.
Just another, defensive guy that's out there, so that would open up a lot for Kelce. But like, he's just been nearly impossible to trust. Like, he hasn't been over 50 yards now. I think it's 6 games now or something. But he hasn't gone over 50 receiving yards. It's just like, and it's getting to the point now where it's like you're playing him because of the name itself. You're not playing him because of the production you've actually gotten out of him. It's just like, oh, it's Kelce. He has to have a good game. When we haven't had that for months now. It feels like.
I mean, and there's some talk that this could potentially be his last game, let's say, if Kansas City gets knocked out tonight.
Fire off into the sunset with Taylor Swift.
Yeah, there are worse people to ride off into the sunset. Yeah, we know, dude. You're so thirsty. Anywho, let's talk to a man who's been covering this team all season long. So Sam McDowell, the Kansas City Star, is standing by. Hopefully he is not frozen right now. What's up, everybody? Back here on The Sweat, I'm Emerson Latzia, sitting alongside Julian Edlow, and we're stoked to have Sam McDowell with us right now, hanging out in Kansas City. He covers the Chiefs for the Kansas City Star. How many layers will you have on tonight?
Well, I've only got about 100-yard walk to the press box, but I still feel like several.
Yeah, dude, I was out there last year for the Jags playoff game, and I had like a 2-mile walk to the stadium. And fans out there are absolutely incredible. Is that place going to still be packed tonight?
You know what? The tickets are going for like record lows. So I think this might be so cold that it's even scaring some of this crowd away.
Yeah, which is kind of hard to believe considering how intense that fan base is. How big of an advantage, though, do you think Mother Nature will give the Chiefs tonight against Miami?
Well, I mean, you look at the historical statistics. I mean, there's a reason the Dolphins haven't won. I think it's 10 straight games now when the temperature's under 40. Tua has never won a game when the temperature's under 45. So that's a real thing. I mean, I think the temperature from the time they left Miami to the time they arrived in Kansas City was almost a 100-degree difference. So, that has to factor in somewhere. However, I think you naturally think that the teams are going to run the ball a little bit more. Miami is second in the NFL in DVOA rush. So it's not like their offense should just be stagnant because they have to run the ball. That's something they've excelled at this year.
So weather probably gives an edge to Kansas City here. But Kansas City, the Chiefs are playing in the same weather. It's going to be just as cold for everybody. Obviously, maybe it impacts Miami a little bit more just in terms of the shock of the differential that you talked about. But Kansas City's offense has kind of been the story this season and the step it's taken back. How impactful specifically to Mahomes in this offense do you think the conditions tonight are going to be?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that's a real thing. But I will say, Patrick Mahomes had the shortest average depth of target in the NFL this season. And so when you look at, I think you look at the wind as much as you do the cold. And because that's what quarterbacks always look at. I think most of them can play in snow. A lot of them can play in rain. It's really hard to throw the ball through the wind. And if you're throwing short frequently already as part of your game plan, I think you could potentially be affected less. And something that's interesting is, Miami does not defend the short pass very well. They're actually fourth worst in the NFL at defending those passes underneath 10 yards. That's already the area of the field where the Chiefs like to attack. So in that sense, you've got a little bit of strength on weakness with the way the Chiefs like to attack the passing game.
So their confidence level then, where would you say the confidence level for the offense is at entering this game, considering some of the struggles for it throughout the year?
Yeah, it's an interesting timing of that question, because if you would ask me, let's say after the Christmas game against the Raiders, I would say it's as low as it's been in the Patrick Mahomes era. They did have that game against the Bengals where I know they only scored 25 points, but it was their second highest yards per play of the season. So I thought their offense was more efficient than the final score indicated in that game. And then you look at the reasons why. And they did simplify some things. They simplified the verbiage in the huddle, just making plays easier for players to understand. They substituted slightly less in that game. They stuck with more of a slimmer rotation at the wide receiver position. They moved Patrick Mahomes out of the pocket more in that game. And then the biggest thing that they did is when you contrast that Raiders game versus the Bengals game is they got out of the huddle really quickly. The Raiders game, there's a 2-minute drill. If you go back and watch in the first half, that is a disaster. Yeah. They re-huddle at one point, huddle twice before the same play at one point. They call timeout because the play clock's expiring. Another time they get a penalty on a tight end because he's not set by the time the ball snapped, because they have to snap it with 1 second, and he's not even up there with 1 second. That Bengals game, they got out of the huddle every single play with at least 13 seconds left on the play clock. So it's amazing how when you clean things up pre-snap, the post-snap looks a lot better too. It allows the offensive line to look at the blocking scheme, allows Patrick Mahomes to survey the defense, but also allows the wide receivers to survey the defense. Yeah. And I think what you've seen this year is you've seen wide receivers that haven't exactly known where to be at all times, because the Chiefs run a lot of option stuff. It depends on Patrick Mahomes and the receivers seeing the plays the same way. Well, guess what? It's a lot easier to see the plays the same way when you have more time to see the plays the same way. So that's something, even though it's a completely different defense this week, that I think can translate from that last Bengals game to this week.
An MVS getting paid, what, $10 million this year just to drop balls, which means he's going to have like the biggest catch of the season tonight.
Well, I want to ask you about these Kansas City pass catchers, Sam. MVS, obviously, the huge drop in the Eagles game. Kadarius Toney has been in the spots he needs to be in. His hands just don't work once he gets there. Mecole Hardman, a guy that has familiarity with the system, comes back this year, but in his first 4 games as a Chief, no more than 3 catches, no more than 13 yards in any game. Then he plays last week without the starters, 11 targets, 6 grabs, 77 yards. Is that a momentum game for him? Do you think he's going to be more involved in this game, given that, I guess you could call it a breakout last week, or is it going to be somebody else in this game?
Yeah, I mean, I think when you say more, it's relative, and I think more than he previously was, yes. Now, Mecole Hardman played every single snap against the Chargers last week. Like, they did not want to go down the wide receiver depth chart. And, they did have an injury to Justin Ross. They did have to go to Justin Watson, which they wanted to even lay off him during that game. But I think the wide receiver rotation is, it's been ever changing for the Chiefs this season. There's been a lot of talk about Marquez Valdes-Scantling, and I totally understand that. But everything I just mentioned about wide receivers knowing where to be and all that stuff, and he blocks well. And I think they have gotten to a place where they don't have the elite pass catchers that they've had in the past with the guy that's coming into Kansas City this week, Tyreek Hill, and therefore they've turned to who has strengths elsewhere. And they believe that Marquez Valdes-Scantling blocks really well. So I think Marquez is still going to be part of the rotation. Obviously, Rashee Rice is going to be a big part of the rotation. And I think Justin Watson's that third guy in there. And you perhaps sprinkle in Mecole Hardman as a fourth guy, perhaps sprinkle in Richie James a little bit. And then, Kadarius Toney had a full week of practice, but I would expect that if he did play, which would be a little bit of a surprise to me, but if he did play, I think it would be in a pretty limited role.
Sam, I'm glad you brought up Tyreek Hill because he says Travis Kelce's not texting him back because he's too busy dating Taylor Swift here. How do you think the fans will react when he runs onto the field for the first time in an opposing uniform here tonight?
It's another question that I think I would have answered differently a year ago. Last off season, Tyreek Hill was pretty intentionally vocal about his time in Kansas City and about, Tua being a better quarterback than Patrick Mahomes. And, I do think one thing this fan base doesn't take well is insults to its quarterback. So I don't think they would have handled it well a year ago. I think in the game, the reaction will be different than it might be pregame or something of that sort. I think if he makes a big play in the game, you will hear some boos. And Travis Kelce and I think it was Justin Reed said this week that they expect that Tyreek Hill will be cheered. He'll get a big ovation. I don't know that I agree with that. I think that these fans are in playoff mode, and therefore everybody on the other team's the enemy, and it's especially the names that they recognize are the enemy.
Yeah, especially with the injuries right now, as Julian, you've said throughout this show, like on the Miami side, he's got to be the biggest concern for this Chiefs defense tonight, right?
Oh, absolutely. But the one guy that did not play in the game in Frankfurt, when you look at this matchup, is Achane. And, he averaged almost 8 yards a carry this year. And we talked about the weather, and therefore I think you are going to see a situation where the Dolphins are going to have to run the ball a little bit more than they did in that first matchup. So I think he's the guy that has probably garnered a ton of the Chiefs' attention purely because he's the guy they haven't seen yet. Tyreek Hill, of course, is always going to garner attention. he actually said to Justin Reed on the field after that game, that first matchup, you guys had a great game plan against me. And so the chess match is always, I totally believe that a rematch in season favors the team that lost the game. They're the team that knows they have to make adjustments and also is more confident about what they're going to see because they think the Chiefs know what worked last time, and therefore they think they might see some of the same things last time, and they might be right about that. I mean, certainly Steve Spagnuolo is going to have a little bit more wrinkles than they did, but I think they're going to be more similar to what they were in that matchup than the Dolphins were last time.
Couple quick ones here for you, Sam. First of all, Tyreek Hill against the Chiefs, 8 grabs on 10 targets for 62 yards. The 7.8 yards per reception was his lowest of the season. So do you think the familiarity gives Kansas City any advantage? Do they have anything special planned in terms of covering him in this game?
Yeah, I think absolutely. Anytime you've seen a guy a ton in practice, it helps. Now, he also knows though a lot of the cornerbacks' tendencies.
Yeah.
Tyreek Hill actually had the biggest play in that first matchup. It was the play that he fumbled, that the Chiefs returned for a touchdown off of the lateral from Mike Edwards to Brian Cook. But the guy that Tyreek Hill isn't familiar with is Trent McDuffie in the slot. And Trent McDuffie just was named first team All-Pro as a slot cornerback. And so, the Chiefs like to travel L'Jarius Sneed with wide receivers this season. They do that a little bit less, I think, when it's a guy that lines up in the slot. So I think he's going to see a lot of Trent McDuffie tonight. I think he's going to see a lot of L'Jarius Sneed. L'Jarius Sneed was one position shy of an All-Pro, and Trent McDuffie is an All-Pro. So he's going to see some good talent today.
Hey, Sam, we really appreciate you hanging out with us here at DraftKings, man. Stay warm tonight, and thank God you got a player who's buying everyone Peacock subscriptions, too, considering that's where the game is. All right, coming up next, everybody, Jonathan Alexander, who covers the Texans, will help us out with the Browns game next. So by now, you may or may not know the coaching carousel in the NFL has just been churning and burning over the past week following Week 18. More vacancies could end up opening up. More positions could end up opening up around the NFL. And Gojo and Golic earlier this week talking about the available head coaching positions in the NFL.
Let's be honest. Most of the players in the NFL are in their 20s, right?
Yeah.
Do you think any team, if Bill goes to a team, do you think the majority of those players are going to go, hell yeah, we have the greatest coach in NFL history, or, oh no, we've heard the way he runs a program and this is going to suck?
I think it's going to depend on the person, because you always hear the phrase great players want to be coached. Like, I have a feeling there's a number of guys that would look at that as an opportunity and say, hey, listen, because the guys that quite frankly balked at that are probably guys that weren't going to be around that long to begin with. I understand it is going to be difficult. Like your point about what we heard about players that would go through that weren't just, born and grown in that organization, right? Guys that would come in, the aging veterans that used to always latch on to the back of those championship rosters. It sounded like hell. And there was that method to the madness. It was almost the assembly line approach, where everyone was siphoned down to their duties. You knew it was expected of you every day in terms of your role on that team, the do your job stuff. But it was almost made purposely miserable to do and be able to replicate those kind of results again in the period that we were in. Like, we talked about this relative to Lane Johnson and the Eagles when they won in 2017, said, I'd rather win one this way than three their way in New England, because that team was the underdogs. They were fun. They were full of personality. And you saw that work. And then, Dad, they went through a massive overhaul and had to work really hard to get back to that same stage, did Philadelphia. Doing that consistently and figuring out how that's possible to replicate that over and over again.
All right, so there were 8 head coach openings around the NFL until the Patriots, after Bill Belichick took off, then hired Gerard Mayo within like 24 hours. Turns out that was like part of his contract, that if Belichick leaves, he was going to be the next man up. So now there are 7 positions available.
Irresponsible move by the Patriots.
Yeah,
extremely.
So, Josh, how could a new coach going to a team impact said team's odds? Do you see a coach impact a lot of future odds?
So I think the only coach that I can think of would be Harbaugh. You're hearing rumors that maybe Harbaugh could go to the LA Chargers.
Which, he's rumored that this week it's being reported that he's going to be meeting with the Chargers.
Exactly, and we did hear rumors and reports that Harbaugh hired, I believe it was Don Yee as his agent. Don Yee was the same agent, I believe, for Tom Brady. So again, Harbaugh, you went to Michigan, you had a promise to the fan base there. We're going to win a championship. What else does he have left to accomplish in college football? And with Nick Saban leaving too, I think there's going to be a big change in college football, because it's getting really hard for coaches with this, the transfer portal and the opt-outs, and every year it's like your team changes on a dime. So I think it's just harder to recruit, harder to keep these good teams together. So if I was Harbaugh, I would get out of college. I would go to the NFL. Your stock has never been higher. He's got a great quarterback. He can work with Herbert. Can he have a lot of say, a lot of power, a lot of control? To me, if Harbaugh goes to the Chargers, I think you're going to see those odds really get a lot better here, a lot shorter in a different direction here for the Chargers.
And as Harbaugh was weighing his NFL opportunities, Don Yee, by the way, is Sean Payton's agent as well. Steve, out of the 7 available head coaching openings right now in the NFL, which one would you say is the best?
Probably Washington, I guess. I mean, you don't think so?
I don't think there's a wrong answer. I think it's just like picking which one has the most potential out of these ones that are on the cusp.
Yeah, I mean, the thing with Washington too is like they have to decide what they're going to do at quarterback, obviously. Like, and it's I'm a little confused by that too, because for like the first half of the season, like Sam Howell was like your passing yard leader. Right? But like they had absolutely no offensive line at all. When the guy's averaging like 5 sacks a game, like something is obviously wrong. And then they got rid of both of their edge rushers, Chase Young and Sweat. So then you take those guys out of the mix too as well. Like this team has nothing like on both sides of the ball, it feels like. I did like what I saw from Howell. Obviously, the tail end of the year, that team just completely gave up. Like, there was like nothing to play for. They obviously mailed in in the second half of the year, but I liked what I saw in the first half, regardless of what they showed. But, I think like Julian said, like, I think you can almost make a case for a lot of these teams, like the Titans, obviously getting rid of Vrabel, going to go through a little bit of a change offensively, like is Derrick Henry's going to be there, but I like what I saw from Will Levis. So I don't really think there's a wrong answer. I think there is a team that would probably be the least attractive to me, and that's the Panthers. Because despite
you don't want that owner.
Despite Bryce Young being there, they don't have a first round pick. They have 6 picks overall, I think, in the draft put together. And that team just needs a complete overhaul offensively. But I don't think it's because of Bryce Young and how he played.
Well, Houston hit a home run with DeMeco Ryans last year, hiring him as head coach. And Jonathan Alexander, who covers the Texans for the Houston Chronicle, joins us now. Dude, worst to first in the division. How has DeMeco Ryans been able to build this winning culture in such a short amount of time?
Yeah, I think he came in with a reputation already in multiple ways. As a defensive mind, as a coach, defensive coordinator before he came to the Texans, who had the number 1 ranked defense in the NFL, and then he also had the respect of the players because he was a former player with the Houston Texans, and he did it at a high level. So they believed in him, and then he brought in some great pieces. They drafted extremely well. C.J. Stroud, number 2 overall, Will Anderson, number 3 overall. He brought in some great pieces, changed the culture of how they wanted to play, and now you see it translate onto the field.
Jonathan, thanks so much for joining us today. I got a question for you just in terms of kind of the chip on the shoulder of the Texans here today. Obviously, there's a betting show. We're looking at the spread and who's going to cover this number. They're getting 2.5 points. It's hard to kind of avoid knowing whether or not you're a dog. You hear a lot of teams after the game say, hey, we were disrespected, we were an underdog. Lamar Jackson mentioned that against the 49ers. Do you think the Texans are going to play this chip on their shoulder? Will that be a benefit to them? C.J. Stroud is 5-2 against the spread as a dog. And by the way, Jonathan, I am on the Texans, so tell me something I want to hear.
Oh.
Yeah, I do. I think they felt like, that I thought that was probably their worst loss of the season in Week 16 when they played the Browns the first time. And I think they felt embarrassed by that. They were missing a lot of their best players, including C.J. Stroud, Will Anderson Jr., Jonathan Grenard got hurt in that first series. So they felt like they were more capable. They were better than what they showed in that first performance. And so I do believe that they'll probably play their best game. They're getting a lot of good players back. Jonathan Grenard's returning. Noah Brown's returning. So I do think that they have a really good chance to pull off the upset against the Browns. I think the Browns have an elite defense, and it's going to be tough for the Texans, but I think the defense will be a lot better, especially against Joe Flacco. I think his luck could potentially run out pretty soon.
So it sounds like you think this is a pretty good revenge spot for the Texans, having lost that game so recently to the same team at home. But I want to know how much of an advantage you think it is now, looking back at it, that C.J. Stroud didn't play in that first game, and this Browns elite defense hasn't gotten a look at him, and they are today. Do you think that plays into Houston's hand here?
Yeah, absolutely. Because, the Browns can't look at the film, can't look at much of the film from the Browns game. That Browns game, they were running, they do things differently when they don't have Stroud. Stroud can do so many different things with his throws. He can make throws that most quarterbacks in the entire NFL, let alone the Texans quarterback room, can't make. So I think that helps out tremendously. Another thing I think what's underrated about Stroud is his ability to instill belief in his teammates. There's a belief in the locker room that as long as they have Stroud, that they can win. He elevates other people's games. He gives them confidence when he's on the field just because of what he can do. He's been consistent all season, been one of the best quarterbacks when healthy. I believe that he provides other element that the Browns haven't seen. I don't think he's going to go, for 300 some yards because the Browns just haven't allowed that this season. However, he'll have a much better performance than what Case Keenum showed in that first matchup.
I just want to quickly ask you about Dalton Schultz here. You mentioned earlier that it looks like Woods is coming back, Noah Brown's coming back here. Schultz has been really the guy that's been shouldering a lot of the load because those guys have been out here. Do you think he's going to be the one who's going to be losing out on some of these targets here, especially because of how strong Cleveland has been over the middle of the field?
Yeah, I think that Cleveland has been good against tight ends this season, so it'll probably be a struggle. But I do think they're going to try to get Dalton Schultz the ball as much as they can. I think the Browns are going to be expecting Nico. Going to be expecting that the Texans will try to target Nico, so the Texans will probably try to be purposeful in trying to get Dalton Schultz the ball. He's their second best receiver on the team. Noah Brown's been good too, but he's been out of the lineup and he's had some big games. But it's going to be incumbent upon Dalton Schultz to step up, and he's shown that throughout the season. He's had some big games, like against the Bengals. He was the reason why they won that game. He was a leading receiver, I believe, and helped set up that game-winning drive. So yes, I do believe that they'll probably go to Dalton Schultz pretty heavily, especially early on too.
Hey, Jonathan, thanks a lot for making some time for us this morning, man. It could always be worse. You could be in Kansas City where it's going to be like negative 30 tonight. So enjoy being in that controlled environment inside the dome, dude. Thanks, man. Have a good rest of your day. We'll look at some Super Bowl splits and dish out some best bets, no sweat bets coming up next. That was the final break of the sweat. This is the final block of the sweat. And it's the moment all of you have been waiting for.
Has it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Playoff futures.
Oh.
You've been talking about it all morning long during commercial breaks. So finally, we will wet your palate here. Regular.
Wet your whistle.
Stop it, guys.
You calm down. Yeah, this side of the desk is just so much more energized than that side. Regular season NFL title split. So it's been like the money that's been brought in like all season long here. Not a whole lot of surprises, Josh, but most money coming in on the 2 top seeds. I don't know when the last time we've seen the 2 top seeds like make the Super Bowl here, but I can tell you with the Bills, this is a fun fact I don't believe we've mentioned on this show. So they're playing the Steelers tomorrow, right? They faced the Steelers 3 times in the postseason. The winner between them in those 3 games has advanced to the Super Bowl. Not always winning the Super Bowl, but has advanced to the Super Bowl.
I would like to know, does that go back to the 70s or the 90s?
That goes back to whenever the first time they met in the postseason was, Jules. All right, do your own damn research.
That nugget.
So,
now we know how to bet the whole thing.
Yeah, I'll tell you what. You know who's disappointed right now, Josh? Bengals bettors right now. 7% of the handle, huh?
You know who's happy about that, though? The house, the sports book. They're just going to rake in all that Bengals money because they got knocked out because Joe Burrow got hurt. But one that jumped out to me, obviously, 49ers, Ravens, they're your 2 favorites here to win the Super Bowl, favorites in their respective conferences. To me, the Bills are interesting just because at one point, they were left for dead. There was a chance that they wouldn't make the playoffs. They've gotten hot here. I think they're kind of playing with house money. You have a crazy storm coming tomorrow. By the way, this line has dipped a little bit in favor of the Steelers. That was at, I believe it was -10. Now it's down to 9.5, 9. But if they can get past the Steelers in that crazy snowstorm, if they can kind of play with that house money and maybe have a play, AFC Championship against Baltimore in Baltimore, I think there could be an angle here where if you're holding a ticket, and also you got to think about the handle and the price of it, Emerson, because the price of the Bills was much higher here at a plus 1,000, plus 800, much higher number than these other teams. So to me, the odds makers, I think, are rooting for these teams to lose. But if the Bills are able to cash a few bets, that's going to be huge for people who had faith in them when everything looked terrible.
Yeah, and the 49ers, the current favorite at plus 220 to win the Super Bowl, Julian.
Yeah, I like the Niners, and I'm not necessarily betting them in the Super Bowl market. I'll still take Niners to win the NFC as my favorite future, and you're laying juice. But again, we now know they have the bye. They would be playing 2 games here as we get the NFL splits, the NFC splits up here. 48% of the handle, almost half the money is riding on the Niners here with roughly a third of the bets. They're getting some sharp money. Looks like they are the only team there, unless you go down to the Vikings, that have a higher handle percentage than bets. And obviously, those Vikings tickets are not going anywhere. Rams, an interesting one. I think the Rams are maybe the team that I'm the most scared of as a Niners backer. But I still think the Niners, those 2 games at home, what they have to prove this year after how last year ended for them, losing on the road without a quarterback, and clearly seeing when they went to Philly what they thought of that and getting that revenge. I think that the Niners are the best team, and I really like them to come out of the NFC with those 2 home games.
Steve, what stands out to you here when you look at these NFC title splits?
I mean, I'm someone that's already talked about the Rams and how I have them to win the Super Bowl here. It opened at, it was at 60-1. We talked about it. It's moved to 40-1 at this point now. Like, they are one of the teams that intrigues me because it feels like nobody's talking about this team at all. Yet when you look at that offense, Nakua, Kupp, Williams, who's been an absolute force since he's come back from injury, and then obviously on the defensive side, you can always disrupt the quarterback there with Aaron Donald. Like, are they a team that can take down the Niners? I think potentially. They absolutely could. And that could be a matchup we see in the second round if the Rams do beat the Detroit Lions, because San Francisco is going to play the team with the lowest seed. If the Rams win, they're the 6th seed. There's a very good chance that we could see that there unless, we get Green Bay pulling off a shocker here. So there is that chance that we get that matchup there. But I just think that people are really kind of sleeping on the Rams at this point because, they were, and we talked about this before, in the preseason, nobody was giving this team a shot, myself included. Mm-hmm. We thought this was going to be one of the worst defensive teams not just in that conference, in the entire league. But they really ended up turning around, and they've been a force down the stretch.
Real quick, if chalk holds, and I'm a Rams backer, I have them plus 3.5 in that game. But if chalk holds, it's Philly that goes to San Francisco for that first game.
Man,
That's
Philly
a
got
buzzsaw.
destroyed by
Again,
City.
the way Philly's playing and going to San Francisco
way
after
San
last
Fran
year and the way that they
crushed
played
them.
this year in that matchup, that's a buzzsaw in the next round.
Yep.
I mean, the Rams were one of the hottest teams entering the playoffs, so they're 7-1 in their last 8 games, Steve. And that game tomorrow, which we'll break down on a Sunday morning edition of The Sweat, 8 to 10 Eastern time tomorrow morning here on DraftKings Network and VSiN.
Can I tell you a red flag real quick? Just from a bet split perspective.
Oh, wow.
Pipe down, Emerson.
Hold on. Eagles. That's a bad sign
Yeah,
for the
that's
Eagles.
bad.
They're getting 22% of bets, second most tickets, but only 13% of the money. That tells me that all these Eagle bets are $5 average Joe, not smart money bets. Just want to throw that in there.
No, that's absolutely fine. The storylines with that Lions-Rams game tomorrow is going. I mean, they're through the roof here. I mean, on the AFC
We've
side,
talked about it so many times. What happens to Jared Goff when he's under pressure? He absolutely crumbles. That he has a strong offensive line in front of him, but he's facing one of the best pass rushing teams in the league.
One of the keys to that game, we're going to get into it tomorrow, sneak peek. McVay coaching against one of the best coaches in the NFL, coaching against the quarterback that he had to hold his hand through that run. I think that's a huge underrated part of that game.
Without a doubt.
I mean, Josh, you just kind of pointed out on the NFC side a situation where the bets completely were crushing the handle, but then what's it tell you there with the Ravens, 31% of the handle and just 23% of the bets?
Yeah, I like that. That's a good angle. And when I look at bet splits, again, really what you're looking for is getting more money than bets because theoretically, if you think about it, the bets being less than the money tells you that each bet is going to be a larger amount, which typically comes from wise guys. So I know it's chalky, but Ravens plus 120 to win the AFC. I think that's definitely a play here. You're getting a little bit of plus money, unlike the 49ers, who are a minus number to win the NFC. Ravens are off a bye. They're rested. They're getting Mark Andrews back, it sounds like. And again, remember when was it against Vrabel and the Titans a few years ago when they were the 1 seed and they lost at home? I think you learned something from that, and maybe you don't take this one for granted. So it's chalky, but a good bet split. I would put a unit here on Ravens plus 120.
All right. John, is that your Super Bowl bet, though? Ravens to win the whole thing? What would be your Super Bowl bet then right now?
Oh, man. I mean, it's hard to argue with the 49ers if they stay healthy. That'd probably be my bet.
So you could see the 1-1 seed then meeting up.
Yeah, but then again, that never happens. It's like in your bracket in the NCAA tournament when everyone picks one seeds and it never happens. So I'm sure it'll be some surprise we're not expecting.
Yeah, just do what my wife does. She builds her bracket out for like
she probably wins her
cute
pool,
mascots. She does. She's won it multiple times. So you just said you had the Rams though. Rams your Super Bowl pick right now?
I mean, at least you're getting just incredible value on a team that could make a lot of noise and the people that really aren't going there. You know, we talk about the Ravens, like they just feel like they're just so above and beyond every other team in the AFC.
Mm-hmm.
Like the Bills being so close as they are, to make it to the Ravens, I don't even think is close. Like, and it's going to be hard to decipher that from what we're going to see from that game against the Steelers, because obviously the elements are going to bring a big part of it. But it's like, there's no Gabe Davis. Not that he was like he's been a huge factor, but like there's just nobody on offense that feels like a difference maker for the Bills at this point. And when I have that type of sentiment, it's like, well, then if that's the case, then what do the Ravens, who have been one of the best defensive teams, like really have to hone in on at that point, right? If those two end up clashing in the championship. So I just feel like the Ravens are so above and beyond. I do feel like they're going to make the Super Bowl. Like Josh said, it's a chalky play. It's a boring answer, but like I don't even think anyone is holding a candle to the Ravens at this point.
I mean, you could look at the Bills. The reason they've ended the season like so hot is they were able to cut down finally on turnovers. That doesn't mean they're not turning the ball over. They're just not turning the ball over as much. What's your Super Bowl pick right now?
I wouldn't say, but Josh Allen looks so bad in the first half of that game against the Dolphins. Like that's what I worry about.
I'm taking the Niners out of the NFC. I love the Ravens. I have some money on the Ravens, but I have to be contrarian because both of them never get there. So if I'm set on the Niners, how about Kansas City?
No.
I love Kansas City to win this game today. Next round, they would be, if chalk holds, they would go to Buffalo to play a team they match up very well with. Revenge spot for the win that Buffalo got in Kansas City earlier in the year. And then if the Ravens lose along the way, maybe the Chiefs could host an AFC Championship game. I wouldn't pick Kansas City going to Baltimore if we got that game, but you never know. So I'll just be a little different here.
You're on one segment with Sam McDowell, a Kansas City Chiefs writer, and now you're just back in the Chiefs left and
Before
right.
he came on the show, I gave Chiefs best. We haven't done best bets.
Dolphins
Chiefs most confident game of the day.
Dolphins back up to +5, by the way, Josh.
All right. No sweat bets. What do you got?
Going with the Houston Texans, Emerson, +2.5. Love this play. Most contrarian play of the weekend. Only 30% bets. At one point, this was -3 for the Browns. It's down to 2.5. It's come back late. Wildcard dogs, 20-10 ATS, 67% ATS. And I think in this spot with Stroud, being a dog 5-2 ATS so far this season, I got to take the points with Houston.
Bukes?
I'm taking Houston straight up. I think they're just going to win this game against the Browns. We mentioned it earlier. 30 points per game allowed by that Cleveland defense on the road.
Clean sweep?
Kansas City. What do I have to? I have to do 5 right now?
Yep.
No, just give me your no sweat bet.
No, I'm saying it's 5 points.
Yeah. Oh, 5 points. Okay. I thought you meant give 5 bets again.
Whatever I got to do. Kansas City.
All right, everybody. Thanks for hanging out with us. Thanks for putting up with us. We appreciate it. We'll see everyone back here tomorrow morning, 8 o'clock Eastern time.